Hello, good morning, or good afternoon. My name is Andre Otero, and today I'll be presenting to you the Katyn Forset Massacre. And yeah, let's get into it. So firstly, I wanted to give a basic overview of the event to explain to you guys what it really was so you don't go in blind. So the Katyn Massacre was essentially a large mass killing that happened in Poland, or in the border between Poland and the Soviet Union, where the Soviet Union essentially took 22,000 Poles and killed them after keeping them in concentration camps. And this happened because Poland separated from both the Soviet Union and Germany in 1939. And the event went under investigation soon after it happened in 1943, but was kept a secret and really pushed down by the Soviet Union to not let it be heard by other countries, and really kept it on the low so people wouldn't put a lot of emphasis on it, because it would of course make them look bad. But on the next slide we'll see the map, so we can really paint the picture of where things happened and really get an idea for where this was. So on the left map we see a big blob of red, which would be the Soviet Union, which is in modern day Russia. And if we look at the graph, we see that all those black crosses were the place of the massacre. So it was really spread out throughout a lot of the Soviet Union, but the majority of the killings came from the one most to the left, which is really close to the border, and is where a lot of the Poles came in from. And another big part of the map that we need to know is the green bordered area. So the green bordered area was Poland. And Poland was, as we could see, divided into two sections. There's one side with the dark gray cubes and one side with the red cubes. The side of the red was the side occupied by the Soviet Union, and they would attack from the west, as they were west of Poland. And the dark gray cubes was the east side, where Germany would come in and they started their invasion. And this essentially happened because the country was split in two, because both Soviet Union and Germany had decided to attack. Now we get to the next slide and we get a little deeper into the history of why this happened. So the Third Reich signed a secret treaty with the Soviet Union to eliminate Poland. And the Soviet Union and Germany both decided to invade Poland on September of 1939, which in turn split the country into, like we saw in the last slide. Nazi Germany from the west and the Red Army, aka the Soviet Union Army, from the east. This ignited World War II in a lot of people's eyes, because before this, not a lot of major conflict had happened, or at least nothing on other countries, and at least not a lot of bloodshed. But when this happened, Britain and a lot of other countries in West Europe, really wanted to back Poland, and made it clear that if any other country, such as Germany, Soviet Union, had touched Poland, that Great Britain would get involved, France would get involved, and other countries, etc. So both sides put thousands of Poles in concentration camp. This really emphasizes a lot on what the Soviet Union did, but this doesn't undermine what the Germans did as well. They also put thousands of Poles in concentration camps. But Stalin was the one that ordered the 22,000 Poles to die in his camps. So he was the one who really orchestrated the Katyn massacre in the forest, and we'll get into that later. So more in detail, Stalin ends up blaming the killing on the Nazis, and after a while, because this really happened in 1940, in 1943 investigations really began to arise, and the Soviet Union did a really good job of pushing it down, not really letting the investigations stir up a lot, and they kept it very minimal. But 50 years later, under Mikhail Gorbachev, he then admitted to that it was the Soviet Union that had done the massacre and had committed the crime, and he was the one that came forth. He was actually the last prime minister of the Soviet Union, and died recently in 2020, I believe. But he was the prime minister all the way up until 1990. So when the confession came out, and the massacre is still commemorated today with statues in Poland, Russia, and all over the United States. So the main one would be the one on the right that we see. I mean, the one on the left, I'm sorry, with the guy getting stabbed in the back with the gun. And this one's actually in the United States in Jersey City. But then a famous one in Poland would be one in War Crawl, Poland, which is a lady with a man laying on her lap and looking up at a plaque of a lot of the soldiers and social workers that died from Poland. Now here we dive into a timeline. So this is a timeline to give a basic overview of everything that had happened. So in August of 1939, we see the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which is the secret treaty that I had said earlier that the Soviet Union had made with Nazi Germany, and was essentially to split Poland in two and have both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union attack Poland all at once. So Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union decided to invade Poland in September of 1939. So the treaty was signed in August, and later in September they took action, and both Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union decided to move in and start their invasion. Later we see in April to May 1940, the Soviet Union, NKVD, we'll dive into that later, carried out mass execution of the Poles, and this is really the main time of the massacre, around April and May, like throughout that time span. And then the massacre is discovered, and the Polish government demands investigation. This happens around 3 to 4 years later, 1943 to 1944, around that time frame. And like I said, they kept it secret for around 50 years, but after the years of keeping it secret, the Soviet Union finally admits to the massacre, and yeah. So like I was saying, the NKVD. The NKVD are the People's Communist of Internal Affairs, was the Soviet Union's secret police, and they were like the guys that carried out the secret jobs. They were Stalin's right-hand man, and these are just a few of them. There was a lot more, but they were the ones that really carried out the massacre. And yeah, so in the Katyn Forset Massacre, they were responsible for pretty much all of it. They organized the planning, execution, and covering up of the kills. They were infamous for their work, and they had done a lot more than this. They were responsible for infamous assassinations, deportation, and many other things. But this was the secret group. On the top, we see their emblem, which can be found at that time all in their uniform and in many parts of Soviet Union. So here we have Gorbachev. So Gorbachev was the last leader of the Soviet Union, and which stopped in around 1990, and he died recently in 2020, like I said earlier. And he's best known for his attempts to reconstruct the Soviet Union and his transparency. And this transparency is eventually what led to him coming forth and confessing, although not being involved, but him confessing that the Soviet Union were indeed the ones that did the massacre, and settling the allegations, settling the investigations of the massacre, and really everyone not really knowing until him coming through about it. So not only this, but this was really the main thing, but this made him a hero throughout all of Poland and the Soviet Union. Really, his transparency and his attempts to reform the Soviet Union, and him admitting, has really made the relationship a lot better between the two countries, because for that 50-year period, Poland and the Soviet Union had a horrible relationship, of course, and him and his efforts really helped that bitter relationship. And finally, we have Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin was really the mastermind behind the whole massacre, although he left it really to the NKVD to perform the act. He was really the one that said to make it happen. So he was the Prime Minister of the Soviet Union from the mid-1920s to his death in 1953, and the one behind the Horde massacre. He did this because he was tired of having to take care of them and look after them, so he had them all executed. So unlike Germany and their concentration camps, the ones in the Soviet Union, they had to take care of them, had to look after them. Of course, they treated them horribly, but they were still responsible for them. And in a lot of articles, it says that Joseph Stalin was fed up with it after a while, and he was the one that ordered the execution. So the main focus of this anger and of this horrible massacre was that he wanted to eliminate all countries that posed a threat to the Soviet Union and to his rise of power. He saw all neighboring countries as inferior, including like the main ones being Slovakia, Lithuania, and countries like that. This massacre reminds us of Stalin's ruthless efforts to take over all of Europe and eventually the world. And thank you all for your time, and the presentation has ended. Thank you so much. Hello, good morning.